Ethan Cole sat alone in the corner booth of Greystone Coffee, staring at his phone and second-guessing everything. His daughter's laughter from this morning still echoed in his head, the way she'd asked if he was nervous about his special friend date. He wasn't nervous. He was terrified. Terrified of hoping. Terrified of failing. Terrified that at 32, this might be his last real shot at something more than exhausted evenings and a life built entirely around someone else's happiness. But then a woman in jeans and an oversized sweater slid into the seat across from him without asking, and everything he thought he knew about that afternoon shattered in an instant. If you want to see how a single father's worst blind date became the greatest accident of his life, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city name so I can see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights above the warehouse floor buzzed with the same monotonous hum they'd been making for the past 6 years. Ethan Cole wiped sweat from his forehead with the back of his work glove and checked the time on his phone. 3:47 p.m. 13 minutes until his shift ended. 13 minutes until he could pick up Maya from after-school care, take her home, make dinner, help with homework, and collapse into the same worn-out couch he'd been collapsing into since she was 2 years old. He hefted another box onto the pallet and tried not to think about the fact that this was his life now. That this had been his life for years. Work, home, Maya, sleep. Work, home, Maya, sleep. A rhythm so steady it had become invisible. The way breathing becomes invisible, until someone asks you to think about it. Yo, Ethan. Marcus jogged over from the loading dock, grinning in that way that meant he was about to say something Ethan wouldn't want to hear. Marcus had worked beside him for 4 years, and in that time, he'd appointed himself Ethan's personal life coach, relationship guru, and motivational speaker, all roles Ethan had explicitly told him he didn't need. Don't start, Ethan said without looking up. I didn't say anything yet. You're about to. Marcus laughed and leaned against the stack of boxes. Man, you know me too well. But listen, I'm serious this time. Sarah's got this friend. No. You didn't even let me finish. I don't need to. The answer's no. Marcus crossed his arms. Ethan, brother, you can't keep living like this. When's the last time you went out? And I don't mean grabbing groceries or taking Maya to the park. I mean out, with an actual adult human woman. Ethan shoved another box into place. I go out. McDonald's play place doesn't count. I wasn't going to say McDonald's. You were thinking it, though. Ethan finally looked up, exasperated. Marcus, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I'm fine. Maya's happy. I'm good. We've got our routine down. Yeah, and that routine's going to have you buried in loneliness by 40. Marcus softened his tone. Look, I'm not saying you got to marry this girl. Just meet her, coffee, 1 hour. If it's terrible, you never have to see her again, and I'll stop bugging you for at least 3 weeks. 3 weeks. I'm being realistic here, and Ethan sighed. The truth was, he had thought about it. Late at night, when Maya was asleep and the apartment was too quiet, he'd wondered what it might be like to have someone to talk to. Not about parent-teacher conferences or grocery lists, but real things. The kind of conversations he used to have before his world shrank down to one person's needs and his own exhaustion. But the idea of dating felt absurd. What did he even have to offer? A one-bedroom apartment where his daughter slept in the actual bedroom and he took the couch most nights? A schedule packed so tight there was barely room to breathe, let alone build something with another person? He was 32 and felt 50. 1 hour, Marcus pressed. That's it. Sarah already told her about you. She thinks you sound sweet. Sweet, Ethan repeated flatly. Hey, sweet is good. Sweet is underrated. Moot. Ethan shook his head, but he was smiling despite himself. Fine, 1 hour. But if this goes badly, you're buying me beer for a month. Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. Deal, Saturday afternoon. Greystone Coffee on 5th, 2 o'clock. Saturday's my day with Maya. Sarah's got it covered. She offered to take Maya to that trampoline place she's been begging to go to. You're welcome. By the way, Ethan wanted to argue, but the look on Marcus's face told him this had been planned for a while. He was being ambushed by kindness, and he didn't have the energy to fight it. Fine, he muttered. But if she's weird, She's not weird. She's a kindergarten teacher. How weird can a kindergarten teacher be? You'd be surprised. Marcus laughed and headed back toward the dock. Saturday, 2 o'clock. Don't bail on me, man. Well, Ethan didn't respond. He just went back to stacking boxes and tried to ignore the uncomfortable flutter of nervousness already settling in his chest. Saturday came faster than he wanted it to. Ethan stood in front of his bathroom mirror that morning, staring at his reflection like it belonged to someone else. He'd shaved, trimmed his hair, put on a button-down shirt he'd forgotten he owned. Maya sat on the edge of the bathtub behind him, swinging her legs and watching him with the kind of scrutiny only a 7-year-old could manage. You look nervous, she said. I'm not nervous. You've been looking at yourself for like 10 minutes. I'm making sure I look okay. You look fine, Dad, but your shirt's weird. Ethan glanced down at the blue button-down. What's wrong with my shirt? It's too buttony. That's because it's a button-down, Maya. She wrinkled her nose. You look like you're going to a job interview. He sighed and started unbuttoning the top button. Better? I guess. She hopped off the tub and grabbed his hand. Are you really going on a date? Sort of. It's just coffee. With a girl? With a woman, yes. Maya grinned. Is she pretty? I don't know. I haven't met her yet. What if she's really pretty and you get nervous and say something dumb? Ethan crouched down so they were eye level. Then I'll say something dumb and we'll both laugh about it, and I'll come home and tell you all about it, okay? She seemed satisfied with that. Okay? But if she's mean to you, I'll beat her up. Please don't beat anyone up. I'm just saying, say it. He kissed her forehead and stood. All right, Sarah's going to pick you up in 20 minutes. Be good, okay? And don't eat too much junk food. No promises, Maya said, already racing out of the bathroom. Ethan watched her go and felt that familiar ache in his chest, the one that came from loving someone so much it physically hurt. She was everything, his whole world. And some days, that felt like enough. But other days, late at night, when the silence pressed in, he wondered if he was doing her a disservice by making her his entire universe. Kids needed to see their parents happy. Not just functional, not just surviving, actually happy. Maybe Marcus was right. Maybe 1 hour of coffee wouldn't kill him. He grabbed his jacket and headed out the door. Greystone Coffee was one of those places that tried too hard to be cozy. Exposed brick walls, mismatched furniture, chalkboard menus with flowery handwriting. Ethan arrived 10 minutes early because he didn't know what else to do with himself. He ordered a black coffee he didn't really want and sat in a corner booth where he could see the door. And then he waited. 2 o'clock came and went. Then 2:05. Then 2:10. He checked his phone. No messages, no missed calls. Marcus had sent him a thumbs-up emoji an hour ago, and nothing since. By 2:15, Ethan was starting to feel the familiar creep of humiliation, the same feeling he'd had in high school when he'd waited outside the movie theater for a girl who never showed. The same feeling he'd had when Maya's mother walked out and didn't look back. The feeling that he was always going to be the person waiting while everyone else moved on. He was about to leave when someone slid into the seat across from him. Is this seat taken? Ethan looked up, startled. The woman sitting across from him wasn't who he'd been expecting, not that he knew what to expect, but she definitely wasn't a kindergarten teacher. She was probably around his age, maybe a little younger, with dark hair pulled into a loose ponytail and a face that looked expensively understated. She wore jeans and an oversized cream sweater, but even in casual clothes, there was something about her that screamed money. The kind of person who didn't have to try. Ethan said, eloquent as ever. I'm actually waiting for someone. I know, the woman said and smiled. So am I. But she's 20 minutes late and you look like you've been stood up too. Thought maybe we could keep each other company while we wait. Ethan blinked. You're also on a blind date? Sort of. My assistant set it up. She thinks I need to reconnect with normal human interaction. The woman made air quotes and rolled her eyes. Her words, not mine. Yo paso oaris. Ethan couldn't help but smile. My best friend set mine up. Said I was turning into a hermit. Well, cheers to meddling friends, I guess. She lifted an imaginary glass, and Ethan found himself laughing despite the absurdity of the situation. I'm Ethan. he said. Vivian. She didn't offer a last name, and he didn't ask. For some reason, it felt right to leave it at that. Just two first names in a coffee shop, waiting for people who might not show up. So, Vivian said, leaning back in her seat, what's your story? And please tell me it's more interesting than mine, because if I have to spend another Saturday pretending to care about quarterly projections, I might lose my mind. Ethan laughed again, and this time it felt easier. I don't know if it's interesting. I work in a warehouse. I've got a 7-year-old daughter. Most nights I'm asleep by 9:30. That actually sounds amazing, Vivian said, and she sounded like she meant it. No offense, but I'd kill for a 9:30 bedtime. What do you do? She hesitated just for a second. I run a company. It's a lot. What kind of company? The kind that doesn't let me sleep past 6 a.m. She smiled, but there was something tired behind it. What about you? What's it like raising a kid on your own? Ethan wasn't sure why he answered honestly. Maybe because she was a stranger and it didn't matter. Maybe because she'd asked like she actually wanted to know. It's hard, he said. Some days I feel like I'm barely keeping it together, but she's everything, you know? Even on the worst days when I'm exhausted and feel like I'm screwing it all up, she looks at me like I'm doing okay. And I don't know. That makes it worth it. Vivian's expression softened. She's lucky to have you. Yeah, I'm lucky to have her. They fell into a comfortable silence, the kind that didn't need to be filled. Ethan glanced at the door again. Still no sign of his date. I don't think she's coming, he said quietly. Mine either. Vivian checked her phone and sighed. Guess we're both officially stood up. Sorry, igushi. Don't be. Honestly, this is better. She looked at him, really looked at him, and Ethan felt something shift. When's the last time someone asked you a real question? Not, how's your day or what's for dinner, but something that actually mattered. Ethan thought about it. I don't know. Years, maybe. Me too. Vivian leaned forward slightly. So here's a real question. If you could do anything right now, anything in the world, what would it be? Ethan didn't even have to think. I'd go home, put Maya to bed, and sit on the couch with someone who didn't need anything from me. We'd just exist. No talking, no pressure, just quiet. Vivian smiled, and it was the saddest, most genuine smile he'd seen in a long time. That sounds perfect. What about you? She looked out the window at the people walking past, the busy street, the world that never stopped moving. I'd disappear, she said softly. Just for a day. No emails. No meetings. No one needing me to be someone I'm not. I'd just be. Sounds like we both need a break. Yeah. She turned back to him. Yeah, we do. They stayed like that for a while. Two strangers in a coffee shop, not filling the silence, just letting it be. And for the first time in years, Ethan didn't feel like he was waiting for something to start. He felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. Eventually, Vivian's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and sighed. I should probably go. Work thing. Yeah, I should get back too. My daughter's probably eaten her weight in pizza by now. Vivian stood, but she didn't leave right away. This was nice, really nice, thank you. Thank you, Ethan said, for, not making this the worst Saturday afternoon of my life. She laughed. Low bar, but I'll take it. They exchanged numbers just in case, Vivian said, though neither of them really explained what just in case meant. And then she was gone, disappearing into the crowd outside, and Ethan was left alone in the corner booth with a cold cup of coffee and the strange, unsettling feeling that something important had just happened. He didn't know what yet, but he felt it. Papa? That night, after Maya was asleep and the apartment had settled into its usual stillness, Ethan's phone buzzed. Unknown number. So, how bad was your blind date? He stared at the message, smiling despite himself. Ethan. Pretty bad. She never showed up. Unknown number. Same. Mine bailed too. Guess we're both disasters. Ethan. Guess so. Unknown number. Want to try again? Coffee. Tomorrow. No blind dates this time, just us. Ethan's heart did something complicated in his chest. He should have said no. Should have stuck to his routine, his safe little world. But Marcus was right. He was lonely, and for the first time in years, someone had looked at him and seen more than just a tired single dad barely holding it together. Ethan. Yeah, I'd like that. Unknown number. Good. Greystone Coffee, 2 p.m. And Ethan? Ethan. Yeah? Unknown number. Don't stand me up this time. He laughed out loud, alone in his dark living room, and typed back. Ethan. Wouldn't dream of it. Well, Sunday afternoon arrived with unexpected sunshine, the kind that made the city feel almost hopeful. Ethan showed up 10 minutes early again. Apparently that was just who he was now, and ordered the same black coffee he still didn't really want. This time, though, he wasn't waiting for a stranger. He was waiting for Vivian. She arrived exactly on time, still dressed casually, but somehow looking like she belonged in a magazine. She spotted him and smiled, and Ethan felt that same unsettling flutter from yesterday. You came, she said, sliding into the seat across from him. So did you. I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure you would either. They both laughed, and just like that, the awkwardness melted. So, Vivian said, wrapping her hands around her coffee cup, no blind dates this time, just two people who got stood up and decided to give this another shot. Sounds about right. Tell me something real, she said suddenly. Something you don't usually tell people. Ethan hesitated. He wasn't good at this, at opening up, at being vulnerable. But something about Vivian made it feel less terrifying. I'm scared, he admitted, all the time. Scared I'm screwing up my daughter. Scared I'm not enough. Scared that one day she's going to realize her dad's just some guy who works in a warehouse and never figured out how to do anything bigger. Vivian didn't flinch, didn't offer empty reassurance. She just nodded. I get that. I'm scared too. Of what? That I've built this entire life that doesn't actually belong to me. That I'm just playing a role everyone expects me to play. And one day I'll wake up and realize I don't know who I am without it. Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the exhaustion she'd been hiding. That why you didn't tell your date who you really were? She smiled sadly. Something like that. It's easier when people don't know. They don't have expectations. They just see me. I see you, Ethan said quietly. Vivian's eyes softened. I know. That's why I came back. They talked for 2 hours. About everything and nothing. About Maya and her terrible jokes. About Vivian's job and the pressure that came with it. About loneliness and hope and the strange comfort of meeting someone who didn't need you to be anything other than yourself. When they finally left the coffee shop, the sun was starting to dip below the buildings, casting long shadows across the street. Vivian walked beside him, hands shoved in her pockets. And for a moment it felt like they were the only two people in the city. Can I ask you something? Ethan said. Sure. Why me? You could have sat with anyone in that coffee shop yesterday. Why'd you pick me? Me? Yeah. Vivian stopped walking and turned to face him. Because you looked like you were about to leave. Like you'd given up. And I know what that feels like. She paused. And because when I sat down, you didn't ask me what I did or where I lived or any of the things people usually ask. You just talked to me like I was normal. You are normal. She laughed. No, I'm really not. But with you, I feel like I could be. Ethan didn't know what to say to that, so he didn't say anything. He just stood there on a quiet street corner with a woman he barely knew but somehow understood completely. Same time next week? Vivian asked. Yeah, Ethan said. Same time. She smiled and walked away, and Ethan stood there long after she'd disappeared, feeling like the ground beneath him had shifted in some fundamental, irreversible way. Over the next few weeks, their coffee meetups became a routine. Every Sunday at 2, Greystone Coffee, corner booth. They talked about everything, work, family, the strange loneliness of being surrounded by people but still feeling invisible. Vivian never mentioned her last name, and Ethan never asked. It felt like an unspoken agreement. In that coffee shop, they were just Ethan and Vivian, no titles, no expectations. But the more time they spent together, the harder it became to ignore what was building between them. One Sunday, Vivian showed up looking more exhausted than usual. Her hair was loose, and there were dark circles under her eyes she hadn't bothered to cover. "Rough week?" Ethan asked as she sat down. "You could say that." She rubbed her temples. "I had to fire someone I liked, and it doesn't matter that it was the right decision, it still feels awful." "That's because you're not a robot." "Sometimes I wish I were." She looked at him. "How do you do it? Stay human when everything around you is trying to turn you into something else." Ethan thought about Maya, about the way she looked at him every morning like he was the most important person in the world. "I don't know. I just try to remember what matters. And when I forget," my daughter reminds me, "she sounds amazing." She is. She's the best thing I've ever done. Vivian smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I used to think I wanted kids, but then I realized I don't even have time for myself. How am I supposed to have time for someone else?" "You make time," Ethan said simply. "You don't find it. You make it." She looked at him for a long moment. "You really believe that?" "Yeah, I do." Something shifted in her expression. "I want to meet her." Ethan blinked. "What?" "Your daughter, Maya. I want to meet her." "Vivian, I know it's fast. I know we're still figuring this out, but I want to know the person who made you who you are." Ethan's chest tightened. Letting someone into Maya's life wasn't something he did lightly. She'd already lost one parent. He couldn't risk her getting attached to someone who might leave. But when he looked at Vivian, really looked at her, he didn't see someone who was going to leave. He saw someone just as scared as he was. Someone trying to figure out how to be real in a world that demanded perfection. "Okay," he said quietly, "but we take it slow." "Slow," Vivian agreed. 2 weeks later, Ethan brought Maya to the park where he and Vivian had started meeting instead of the coffee shop. It felt safer somehow, more neutral. Maya ran ahead, already making a beeline for the swings, and Vivian stood beside him, hands in her jacket pockets, looking more nervous than he'd ever seen her. "She's going to interrogate you," Ethan warned. "Fair warning, I can handle a 7-year-old. Famous last words, E. Maya spotted them and ran over, skidding to a stop in front of Vivian. She looked her up and down with the kind of scrutiny that would make a CEO sweat. "Are you my dad's girlfriend?" Maya asked bluntly. "Maya?" Ethan started, mortified. "It's okay," Vivian said, crouching down so she was eye level with Maya. "I'm Vivian, and I don't know if I'm your dad's girlfriend yet. We're still figuring that out." Maya considered this. "Do you like him?" "I do." "Why?" "Because he's kind, and he listens, and he makes me laugh." Maya nodded, apparently satisfied. "Okay, but if you're mean to him, I'll know. I'm very observant." Vivian bit back a smile. "I'll keep that in mind." "Good." Maya grabbed Vivian's hand. "Come on, I'll show you how high I can swing." And just like that, the interrogation was over. Ethan watched as his daughter dragged Vivian toward the playground, chattering nonstop, and felt something warm and terrifying settle in his chest. This was real. This was happening, and he had no idea how to stop it, or if he even wanted to. As the sun set and the park started to empty, the three of them sat on a bench eating ice cream Maya had insisted they get from the vendor by the gate. Maya sat between them, chocolate smeared across her face, swinging her legs happily. "You're nice," Maya announced to Vivian. "Thank you. You're nice too." "I know." Maya took another bite of ice cream. "Are you going to come to my birthday party?" Ethan's stomach dropped. "Maya? When's your birthday?" Vivian asked. "Next month. Dad's going to make me a cake. He's not very good at it, but I don't tell him that." Vivian laughed. "I'd love to come, if that's okay with your dad." Ethan looked at her, at the way she was smiling at his daughter, at the way she'd folded herself into this moment like she belonged there, and he realized he didn't want her to leave. Not now, not ever. "Yeah," he said quietly. "It's okay with me." Maya grinned and went back to her ice cream, oblivious to the way the world had just shifted again. Later, after they'd walked Maya home and she was safely inside watching cartoons, Ethan and Vivian stood outside his apartment building, the city buzzing quietly around them. "Thank you," Ethan said, For today. For everything. Thank you, Vivian replied, for letting me in. They stood there, close but not touching, and Ethan wanted to kiss her, wanted it so badly it ached. But he didn't. Not yet. Because this, whatever this was, felt too important to rush. I'll see you next week, he asked. Vivian smiled. Same time, same place. She walked away, and Ethan stood there watching her go, feeling like the loneliest chapter of his life was finally starting to close. And for the first time in years, he wasn't afraid of what came next. The weeks that followed blurred together in a way that felt both impossibly fast and achingly slow. Ethan found himself checking his phone more often than he wanted to admit, waiting for Vivian's texts that came at odd hours. Late at night, when she'd finally escaped whatever meeting had kept her trapped in a conference room, or early in the morning before Maya woke up. When the city was still quiet and it felt like they were the only two people awake in the world, their Sunday meetings stretched into weeknight dinners at small restaurants where nobody looked twice at them. Vivian always chose places that were out of the way, tucked into neighborhoods where the lighting was dim and the crowds were sparse. At first, Ethan thought she was just private. It wasn't until he saw her glance over her shoulder for the third time during one meal that he realized she wasn't being private. She was hiding. You okay? He asked, setting down his fork. Vivian looked up from her barely touched pasta. Yeah, sorry. Just tired. You keep looking at the door. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Habit. What kind of habit? She hesitated, twisting her napkin in her lap. The kind you develop when you spend most of your life having cameras pointed at you. Mom, Ethan frowned. Cameras? It's nothing, just work stuff. She changed the subject before he could press further. How's Maya doing with her science project? Did she decide on the volcano? He let it go, even though every instinct told him there was more to the story. But that was the thing about whatever they were building. It existed in this strange bubble where the outside world didn't quite touch them. Vivian didn't ask about his financial struggles, and he didn't ask why she flinched every time someone walked too close to their table. But the bubble couldn't last forever. It was a Thursday night, late October, when everything started to crack. Maya was at a sleepover, her first in months, and Ethan had spent the entire evening anxiously checking his phone to make sure she was okay. Vivian had invited him to her place for the first time, and he'd said yes before really thinking about what that meant. The address she'd sent him was downtown, in one of those glass towers that scraped the sky and made him feel immediately out of place. The lobby was all marble and gold accents, with a doorman who looked at him like he was lost. I'm here to see Vivian, Ethan said, feeling ridiculous. The doorman's expression shifted slightly. Miss Sinclair? Yeah, I think so. The doorman picked up a phone, spoke quietly into it, then nodded. Penthouse. Elevator's on your right. Ethan stepped into the elevator and watched the numbers climb, 20, 30, 40, until they stopped at the very top. The doors opened directly into an apartment that looked like something out of a magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city, glowing in the twilight. The furniture was expensive and minimal, the kind of place that felt more like a showroom than a home. Vivian stood by the windows, barefoot, wearing jeans and a sweater that probably cost more than his rent. She turned when she heard him step out of the elevator, and for a moment, neither of them said anything. So, Ethan said finally, penthouse. Yeah. Vivian walked toward him, arms crossed like she was protecting herself. Surprise. You could have mentioned this. Would it have changed anything? Ethan looked around, at the artwork on the walls, the designer furniture, the kitchen that looked like it had never been used. I don't know, maybe. That's why I didn't tell you. Her voice was quiet. I wanted you to know me first, not this. He turned to face her. Who are you, Vivian? She took a breath. Vivian Sinclair, CEO of Sinclair Global Enterprises. Net worth somewhere north of $2 billion, depending on the stock market. Divorced 6 months ago from a man who spent our entire marriage sleeping with his assistant. She said it all in one rush, like ripping off a bandage. And before you ask, yes, that's why I didn't want you to know. Because the second people find out, everything changes. They start seeing the money instead of me. Ethan stood there trying to process it. 2 billion. The number didn't even feel real. Why didn't you just tell me? Because you treated me like a person, Vivian said, and her voice cracked slightly. Do you know how rare that is? Everyone wants something from me. A job, a favor, an investment, a photo. But you didn't even know who I was. And you still made me feel like I mattered. You do matter. Not because of the money? I didn't know about the money. Ish. Exactly. She moved closer. That's my point. You saw me, just me, and I haven't felt that in years. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. This is a lot. I know. I work in a warehouse. Vivian, I make $38,000 a year. I sleep on a couch in a one-bedroom apartment. You live in a penthouse. I don't care about any of that. Das Goi? Maybe you should. He wasn't angry, just overwhelmed. Because I don't know how to exist in your world. I can't take you to fancy restaurants or fly you to Paris for the weekend. I can barely afford pizza on Fridays. Vivian stepped closer, close enough that he could see the exhaustion in her eyes. I don't want fancy restaurants or Paris. I want what we've been doing. Coffee, parks, conversations that don't make me want to throw my phone into the river. I want someone who doesn't expect me to be perfect all the time. I'm not perfect either. Good. Perfect is exhausting, boss. They stood there in the enormous apartment, the city glittering below them, and Ethan felt the weight of everything pressing down. This wasn't just about money. It was about two completely different lives, two people who existed in separate universes, trying to figure out if there was a place where those universes could overlap. I need time, Ethan said finally, to think about this. Vivian nodded, and he saw the flicker of fear in her expression. Okay. I'm not saying no. I'm just saying I need to process. I get it. She walked him back to the elevator, and when the doors opened, she caught his hand. Ethan? He turned. Thank you for not running the second you found out. I'm not running, he said. I'm just thinking. The elevator doors closed, and Ethan rode down 40 floors feeling like he'd just stepped off a cliff. He didn't text Vivian that night, or the next day, or the day after that. It wasn't that he didn't want to. It was that he didn't know what to say. Every time he started typing something, it felt inadequate. How do you tell someone that their world scares you? That you're terrified of not being enough? Of being swallowed whole by a life you don't understand? Maya noticed his mood shift. She didn't say anything at first, just watched him with those perceptive 7-year-old eyes that missed nothing. But on Saturday morning, while they were making pancakes, his one culinary skill, she finally broke the silence. Is Vivian coming to my birthday party? Ethan flipped a pancake badly. I don't know, sweetheart. Did you guys have a fight? Not exactly. Then what happened? He looked at her, at the worried crease between her eyebrows, and realized he couldn't lie. I found out she's really rich, like really, really rich, and it scared me. Maya frowned. Why? Because we're not rich, and I don't know if someone like her should be with someone like me. That's dumb. Maya, it is, Dad. You like her, right? Yeah. And she likes you? I think so. Then who cares about money? She said it so simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. You always tell me that people are more important than stuff. Ethan smiled despite himself. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just don't listen. She grabbed her plate and headed toward the table. You should call her. Maybe. Not maybe, should. Maya pointed her fork at him. If you don't, I will. And I'll tell her you're being dumb. Please don't do that. Then fix it. Out of the mouths of children, Ethan stood there in his tiny kitchen, spatula in hand, and realized his 7-year-old had more emotional intelligence than he did. He called Vivian that afternoon. She answered on the second ring. Hey, she said quietly. Hey. Ethan sat on the couch, phone pressed to his ear. I'm sorry I disappeared. It's okay. I get it. No, it's not okay. I freaked out, and instead of talking to you, I just shut down. That wasn't fair. There was a pause. Are you calling to end this? No. The word came out fast, definitive. I'm calling to tell you that I'm an idiot, and my daughter thinks I'm being dumb, and she's probably right. Vivian laughed, and the sound of it loosened something in his chest. She called you dumb? Ukbo, uktop, talkshens, in so many words. He took a breath. Look, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to date a billionaire. I don't know how to fit into your world. But I know I don't want to stop seeing you. And I know that when I'm with you, I feel like myself in a way I haven't in years. So if you're willing to be patient with me while I figure this out, then I'm in. Another pause, longer this time. Ethan? Yeah? I don't need you to fit into my world. I need you to let me into yours, son. Something about the way she said it, the quiet desperation in her voice, made him understand. She wasn't looking for someone to match her lifestyle. She was looking for someone to remind her what life felt like outside of boardrooms and balance sheets. Okay, he said. Then let's try this. For real. For real, she echoed. They made plans to meet the next day, and when they hung up, Ethan felt lighter than he had in days. Maya wandered into the living room and raised an eyebrow. Did you fix it? I'm working on it. Good, because I like her, and you're happy when she's around. Ethan pulled her into a hug. When did you get so wise? I told you. I've always been wise. You just don't pay attention. He laughed and kissed the top of her head, grateful for the small person who somehow always knew exactly what to say. The next few weeks were an exercise in navigation. Vivian started spending more time at Ethan's apartment, not because it was nice, but because it felt real. She'd sit on his lumpy couch in sweatpants, eating takeout straight from the container, and look more relaxed than he'd ever seen her. Maya warmed to her quickly, and soon Vivian was helping with homework, playing board games, and learning how to braid hair with varying degrees of success. But the outside world kept creeping in. One evening, Ethan picked up Vivian from her office, a gleaming tower downtown that made his warehouse look like a shed. The lobby security recognized her immediately and waved them through, and Ethan felt the eyes of every person they passed tracking them. When they stepped outside, a photographer was waiting. Miss Sinclair, who's your friend? Where's my cheese? Vivian grabbed Ethan's hand and kept walking, but he felt her tense. The photographer followed for half a block, snapping pictures, until Vivian finally turned around. Enough, she said, her voice sharp. Or I'll make a call. The photographer backed off, and they walked the rest of the way to the parking garage in silence. When they got to Vivian's car, a sleek black sedan that probably cost more than Ethan would make in 5 years. She leaned against it and closed her eyes. I'm sorry, she said. For what? For this. For dragging you into my mess. Ethan stepped closer. I'm not dragged. I'm here because I want to be. Even with photographers following us. Even with that. He brushed a strand of hair out of her face. But you've got to talk to me. You can't just bottle this stuff up and pretend it's fine. She opened her eyes. I don't know how to not bottle things up. It's how I've survived. Well, you don't have to survive anymore. Not with me. Something shifted in her expression. Relief mixed with fear, like she wanted to believe him but didn't know how. This is new for me. Letting someone in. I'm not good at it. I'm not either. So we'll figure it out together. She kissed him then, right there in the parking garage, and it felt like every wall she'd been holding up came down. When they pulled apart, she was smiling. Maya's birthday is next weekend, Ethan said. You still coming? Wouldn't miss it. Oh. Fair warning, it's going to be 8 7-year-olds hopped up on cake and running around like maniacs. Vivian laughed. Sounds perfect. And for a moment, standing in that concrete parking garage with the city humming around them, it really did feel perfect. Maya's birthday party was exactly as chaotic as Ethan had predicted. 8 kids, 1 tiny apartment, and enough sugar to fuel a small army. Vivian showed up early, bringing a gift wrapped so beautifully it looked like it belonged in a store window. Maya tore into it with the enthusiasm only a 7-year-old could muster and gasped. A telescope! Vivian smiled. Your dad said you were interested in space. This is the best present ever! Maya threw her arms around Vivian, and Ethan watched the way Vivian's expression softened, the way she held his daughter like she was something precious. Marcus showed up with his wife Sarah, took one look at Vivian, and pulled Ethan aside. That's her? Marcus whispered. The coffee shop girl? Yeah. Dude, she's way out of your league. I know. No, I mean like astronomically out of your league. How did you... I have no idea. Ethan watched Vivian laugh at something one of the kids said, her guard completely down. But somehow she likes me anyway. Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. Good for you, man. Seriously, you deserve this. The party wound down as the sun set, parents collecting their sugar-crashed children one by one until it was just Ethan, Maya, and Vivian in the aftermath of streamers and cake crumbs. Maya was on the couch, trying to stay awake long enough to look through her new telescope, but losing the battle. I'll get her to bed, Ethan said quietly. He carried Maya to her room, tucked her in, and by the time he came back out, Vivian had started cleaning up. She moved around his tiny apartment like she belonged there, throwing away plates and folding the tablecloth Maya had insisted they use. You don't have to do that, Ethan said. I know. She smiled. But I want to. They worked in comfortable silence, the kind that came from spending enough time together that words weren't always necessary. When the apartment was mostly clean, they collapsed onto the couch, exhausted. Thank you, Ethan said, for today, for everything. Thank you for letting me be part of it. Vivian leaned her head on his shoulder. I can't remember the last time I felt this normal. Normal's good. Normal's great. She was quiet for a moment. Can I tell you something? Anything. When my marriage fell apart, I thought I was done. With relationships, with trusting people, with all of it. I buried myself in work because it was the only thing that made sense. And then I met you, and suddenly, work didn't feel like enough anymore. She lifted her head to look at him. You make me want to live again. Not just survive. Actually live. Ethan felt something crack open in his chest. You do the same for me. I didn't realize how lonely I was until I wasn't anymore. She kissed him, slow and deliberate, and when they pulled apart, she smiled. I'm glad you didn't bail after the blind date that never happened. Me too. They stayed like that for a while, tangled together on his worn-out couch, the city lights filtering through the windows. And for the first time in years, Ethan felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. But reality, as always, had other plans. The next morning, Ethan woke to 17 missed calls and a dozen text messages. His phone was vibrating on the coffee table, lighting up with notifications he didn't understand. He grabbed it, still groggy, and saw Marcus's name at the top of the list. Marcus. Dude, call me. Marcus. I'm serious. Call me right now. Marcus. Ethan, check the news. Emma. Ethan's stomach dropped. He opened his browser and typed in his own name, something he'd never done before. The results loaded, and his blood went cold. Billionaire CEO Vivian Sinclair. Spotted with mystery man at child's birthday party. Sources. Say Sinclair's new boyfriend is a warehouse worker from divorce to downgrade. Vivian Sinclair's surprising new romance. There were photos. Dozens of them. Him and Vivian at Maya's party. Him carrying groceries into his building. Them walking through the park. Every private moment they'd shared, now plastered across gossip sites and tabloids. He scrolled through the articles, each one worse than the last. Some were just nosy. Others were cruel, calling him a gold digger, questioning what someone like Vivian saw in someone like him. There were think pieces about wealth gaps and power dynamics. There were Reddit threads dissecting his life. His phone rang. Marcus. Have you seen it? Marcus asked immediately. Yeah, I'm looking at it now. Man, I'm sorry. This is insane. Ethan's hands were shaking. How did they even find out who I am? I don't know, but it's everywhere. TMZ, People, even the local news picked it up. You're famous now, brother, and not in a good way. Ethan hung up and stared at his phone. This was what Vivian had been protecting him from. This was why she looked over her shoulder in restaurants, why she chose places where nobody would recognize her. And now it was too late. Vivian called 10 minutes later. Ethan, I'm so sorry. I didn't know they were following us. I should have been more careful. It's not your fault. Yes, it is. This is my life, my mess, and I dragged you into it. Vivian, I have a PR team working on it. They're going to try to get the photos taken down, issue a statement, something. I don't know. I'm figuring it out. Ethan closed his eyes. What does this mean for us? She was quiet for a long time. I don't know, but I know I don't want to lose you. You're not going to lose me. He said it even though he wasn't sure it was true. We'll figure it out. But figuring it out turned out to be harder than either of them expected. Over the next few days, the story grew. More photos surfaced, more articles. Someone found Ethan's Facebook profile and started screenshotting old posts. Someone else dug up Maya's school and started asking questions. And that was when Ethan finally lost it. He called Vivian, his voice shaking with anger. They're at Maya's school, reporters, asking teachers about me, about her. I'll make it stop, Vivian said immediately. I'll get a restraining order. You can't make it stop, Ethan shouted, and then immediately regretted it. He lowered his voice. I'm sorry. I'm not mad at you. This isn't what I signed up for. I didn't think it would be like this. I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I need time, Ethan said, to figure out how to protect Maya, how to protect us. Okay. Vivian's voice was barely a whisper. Whatever you need. They didn't see each other for a week. Ethan threw himself into work, picking up extra shifts, anything to avoid thinking about the mess his life had become. Maya noticed, of course. She kept asking about Vivian, and Ethan kept deflecting until finally she cornered him after dinner. Did Vivian leave? Ethan looked at his daughter, at the worry in her eyes, and felt his heart break. No, sweetheart, she didn't leave. Then why isn't she here? Because things got complicated. Complicated how? He sat down beside her. People found out about us, and now they're writing things and taking pictures, and it's a lot to deal with. Maya frowned. Are you going to stop seeing her? I don't know. That's dumb. Maya? It is, Dad. You're happy with her. I'm happy with her. Who cares what other people think? It's not that simple. Yes, it is. She looked at him with that serious expression she got when she was trying to make a point. You always tell me that if something's important, you fight for it. So why aren't you fighting for her? Ethan stared at his daughter, this tiny person with more courage than he could ever hope to have. When did you get so smart? I keep telling you, I've always been smart. That night, after Maya was asleep, Ethan sat on his couch and thought about everything. About Vivian's smile, about the way she looked at his daughter, about the peace he felt when she was around. And he realized Maya was right. He was being a coward. He texted Vivian, Ethan, can we talk? Her response came immediately. Vivian, always. They met at the park the next day, the same bench where they'd brought Maya weeks ago. Vivian looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. But when she saw him, she smiled, and it was like the sun coming out. Hi, she said. Hi. They sat in silence for a moment, watching the world move around them. I'm sorry, Ethan said finally, for pulling away, for making you feel like this was all your fault. It kind of is my fault. No, it's not. You didn't ask for any of this, and I knew what I was getting into, or at least I should have known. He turned to face her. Maya asked me why I wasn't fighting for you, and I didn't have a good answer. Vivian's eyes filled with tears. I don't want to make your life harder. You don't. You make it better. The media stuff, the photographers, the articles, that's hard, but losing you would be harder. She reached for his hand. I don't know how to fix this. We don't have to fix it. We just have to deal with it together. Together, she repeated, like she was testing the word. Yeah, you and me. We figure it out as we go. Vivian wiped her eyes and laughed. That's terrifying. I know, but it's better than the alternative. She leaned into him, and he wrapped his arm around her, and they sat there as the afternoon faded into evening. It wasn't a perfect solution. It wasn't even close. But it was a start. And sometimes, Ethan thought, a start was all you needed. The decision to move forward together didn't magically fix everything. If anything, it made things harder in ways Ethan hadn't anticipated. The media attention didn't fade. It intensified. Every time they went out, someone had a camera. Every time Vivian picked Maya up from school, parents whispered. Ethan's coworkers at the warehouse started treating him differently, some with curiosity, others with barely concealed resentment. So you're dating a billionaire now? one guy said during their lunch break, his tone making it clear what he thought about that. Must be nice. Ethan kept his head down. It's not like that. Sure it's not. The guy laughed. You hit the lottery, man. Good for you. See. Ethan didn't bother arguing. What was the point? Nobody would believe that he and Vivian had met by accident, that she'd sat down at his table because her own date had bailed, that they'd built something real before he even knew who she was. The story was too simple, too honest. People wanted drama, scandal, something that fit their assumptions about how the world worked. But the worst part wasn't the strangers or the coworkers. It was the slow realization that their lives didn't fit together as easily as they'd hoped. Vivian's schedule was insane. 18-hour days, last-minute flights, board meetings that ran until midnight. Ethan's was rigid in a different way. Warehouse shifts that started at 6 a.m., school pickups at 3:30, bedtime routines that couldn't be skipped. Finding time to see each other became a logistical nightmare. They tried. Every free moment Vivian had, she spent with them. She'd show up at Ethan's apartment at 10 p.m., exhausted, and they'd sit on the couch drinking cheap beer and talking about nothing important. She'd join them for dinner when she could, helping Maya with her math homework, even though Maya's teacher had moved on to concepts Vivian hadn't thought about in decades. She was trying so hard to make it work, and Ethan loved her for it, but he could see the cracks forming. One Thursday night, Vivian showed up 2 hours late for dinner. Ethan had made spaghetti, one of the 3 meals he could actually cook, and Maya had fallen asleep waiting. Vivian stood in the doorway looking wrecked, her suit wrinkled, her makeup smudged. I'm sorry, she said immediately. The meeting ran over. I tried to get out, but it's okay. Ethan stepped aside to let her in. It's not okay. I promised Maya I'd be here. She understands. She's 7. She shouldn't have to understand. Vivian sank onto the couch and put her head in her hands. I'm failing at this. Ethan sat beside her. You're not failing. I am. I can't keep doing this, showing up late, canceling plans, asking you to wait while I put out fires at work. You and Maya deserve better than this. We want you. That's better than anything else. Vivian looked at him and he saw the doubt in her eyes. Do you, though? Because sometimes I think you'd be happier with someone who could actually be here. Someone whose life isn't complete chaos. My life was chaos before I met you, Ethan said. It's just different chaos now. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I don't know how much longer I can do this. The job, the media, all of it. Something's got to give. Then let something give. It's not that simple. Why not? Vivian was quiet for a long moment. Because I've spent my entire adult life building this company. It's everything I have. If I step back, if I let go, then who am I? You're the woman I'm in love with, Ethan said. The woman my daughter asks about every single day. The woman who makes me feel like I'm not just surviving anymore. But to you, Vivian's eyes filled with tears. You love me? Yeah, I do. She kissed him then, hard and desperate, like she was trying to prove something to both of them. When they pulled apart, she was crying. I love you too, she whispered. I'm just scared I'm going to screw this up. Then we'll screw it up together. She laughed through her tears. That's not reassuring. It's honest. They sat there in the quiet apartment, holding on to each other like they were the only solid things in a world that kept shifting. And maybe they were. The breaking point came 3 weeks later. Vivian's company was in the middle of a major acquisition, something that had been in the works for months and required her full attention. She'd warned Ethan it would be intense, that she'd be unreachable for stretches of time, but he hadn't realized just how bad it would get. She disappeared. Not intentionally, not cruelly, but completely. Days would pass without a text. Phone calls went straight to voicemail. Maya stopped asking when Vivian was coming over, which somehow hurt worse than if she'd kept asking. Ethan told himself it was temporary, that once the deal closed, things would go back to normal. But normal felt like a distant memory. On the 9th day of radio silence, Ethan cracked. He showed up at Vivian's office unannounced, walked past the receptionist who tried to stop him, and took the elevator straight to the executive floor. Her assistant, a sharp woman in her 50s who looked like she could kill someone with a glance, stood up immediately. Mr. Cole, you can't be here. Miss Sinclair is in a meeting. Bis. I don't care. Ethan kept walking toward the glass-walled conference room where he could see Vivian surrounded by suits and spreadsheets. I need to talk to her. Sir, if you don't leave, I'll have to call security. He stopped and turned to face the assistant. Then call them. But I'm not leaving until I see her. The assistant hesitated, then sighed. Wait here. She disappeared into the conference room. Through the glass, Ethan watched her lean down and whisper something to Vivian. Vivian's head snapped up, her eyes finding his through the window. For a second, she looked panicked. Then she excused herself and stepped out into the hallway. Ethan, what are you doing here? I needed to see you. I'm in the middle of a deal. I can't just... You've been gone for 9 days, Vivian. 9 days without a single call. Maya thinks you left. I'm starting to think she's right. Vivian's face crumpled. I didn't leave. I'm just drowning here. This acquisition, it's the biggest thing my company's ever done. If you screw it up, you'll still have me, Ethan said. But if you keep doing this, if you keep disappearing, you won't. Are you giving me an ultimatum? I'm telling you the truth. His voice cracked. I can't do this alone. I've been doing it alone my entire life, and I thought maybe with you, I wouldn't have to anymore. But I'm still alone, Vivian. The only difference is now I know what I'm missing. She reached for his hand, but he pulled back. Don't. Not unless you're actually going to be here. I want to be here. You have no idea how much I want that. Then figure it out, Ethan said, because I can't keep explaining to my daughter why the person she's gotten attached to keeps disappearing. It's not fair to her. And honestly, it's not fair to me either. Vivian was crying now, makeup streaking down her face. I don't know how to do both, the job and you. I don't know how to split myself in half and be enough for everyone. Then stop trying to be enough for everyone. Just be enough for us. It's not that simple. It is that simple. You're just too scared to choose. The words hung between them like a challenge. Vivian stared at him, and he could see the war happening behind her eyes, duty versus desire, obligation versus love. And in that moment, Ethan realized he couldn't make the choice for her. She had to decide what she wanted more. I have to go back in there, Vivian said quietly. The lawyers are waiting. Ethan nodded. Yeah, okay. He turned to leave, but she caught his arm. Ethan, wait, please. Just give me 2 more days. The deal closes on Saturday. After that, we'll figure this out. I promise. You can't keep making promises you don't keep. I know, but I'm asking you to trust me one more time. He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the exhaustion, the desperation, the fear that she was losing something she'd never thought she'd find. And despite everything, despite the anger and hurt, he still loved her. 2 days, he said. But that's it, Vivian. I can't keep doing this. I know, 2 days. He left her standing in that hallway and didn't look back. The elevator ride down felt like descending into some deeper version of loneliness, the kind that came from hoping and being disappointed. When he got home, Maya was sitting on the couch with her homework spread out around her. Did you see Vivian? She asked without looking up. Yeah. Is she coming back? Ethan sat beside her. I don't know, sweetheart. Maya finally looked at him, and he saw his own sadness reflected in her eyes. I really liked her, Dad. I know, me too. It's not fair. No, Ethan agreed. It's not. They sat in silence, and Ethan felt the weight of another potential loss settling over them. He'd been through this before. The mother who'd walked away. The friends who'd disappeared when life got hard. He'd learned to expect it, to build walls that kept the hurt manageable. But Vivian had slipped past those walls, and now he was paying the price. The next 2 days crawled by. Ethan went to work, picked up Maya, made dinner, went through all the motions while his phone stayed silent. He kept telling himself she'd call, that she'd keep her promise this time. But Saturday came and went without a word. On Sunday morning, he woke up to Maya standing beside the couch, holding his phone. Dad, someone's at the door. Ethan sat up, disoriented. What time is it? 8 o'clock. And there's a lot of people outside? That got his attention. He looked out the window and saw 3 black SUVs parked on the street, along with a small crowd of neighbors who'd come out to see what was happening. And standing on his doorstep, looking more nervous than he'd ever seen her, was Vivian. He opened the door. What's going on? I quit, Vivian said. Ethan blinked. What? I quit my job. Well, technically I'm transitioning to a board position, but I'm stepping down as CEO. As of yesterday. Vivian, you can't. I can, and I did. She stepped closer. You were right. I was too scared to choose. I kept thinking I could have everything if I just worked hard enough, if I just sacrificed enough. But the only thing I was sacrificing was the one thing that actually mattered. Your company, will survive without me. The acquisition closed yesterday, successfully. And while everyone was celebrating, I realized I didn't care. I didn't care about the stock price or the board's approval or any of it. All I cared about was getting back here. To you and Maya. Maya appeared beside Ethan, still in her pajamas. You came back. Vivian crouched down. I did. And I'm sorry it took me so long. I'm sorry I disappeared. That wasn't fair to you. Are you going to disappear again? No. I'm going to be here. For real this time. Maya looked at Ethan, waiting for his cue. He didn't know what to say. This was everything he'd wanted, but it felt too big, too sudden. You didn't have to quit your job. Yes, I did. Vivian stood. Because you were right about something else, too. I don't know who I am without the company, and that terrifies me. But you know what terrifies me more? Losing you because I was too stubborn to figure it out. What are you going to do now? I don't know. She laughed, and it sounded slightly hysterical. Isn't that insane? I just walked away from a billion-dollar company, and I have absolutely no plan. But I have time now. Time to figure out who I am when I'm not running from one crisis to the next. Time to be with you and Maya. Time to build something that's actually mine, not just something I inherited. Ethan stared at her, this woman who'd just blown up her entire life for him, and felt something crack open in his chest. You're insane. Probably. She took his hand. But I'd rather be insane with you than perfectly reasonable and alone. Maya tugged on Ethan's shirt. Dad, can she stay? He looked down at his daughter, then back at Vivian, and realized he'd been waiting his entire life for someone to choose him. Really choose him. Not out of obligation or convenience, but because they wanted to. Yeah, he said quietly. She can stay. Vivian's face broke into the most genuine smile he'd ever seen. Thank you. Maya grabbed Vivian's hand and dragged her inside. You have to help me with my space project. Dad doesn't know anything about planets. I know some things about planets, Ethan protested. You thought Mars was the one with rings. That was one time. Vivian laughed, and the sound filled the apartment in a way that made it feel less like a cramped one-bedroom and more like home. Ethan closed the door, shutting out the world, the photographers, the neighbors, the judgments and expectations. In here, it was just the three of them. And maybe that was enough. They spent the rest of the morning on the floor building a model solar system out of foam balls and paint. Vivian's expensive clothes got covered in glue, and she didn't seem to care. Maya narrated every fact she knew about each planet, most of them wrong, and neither adult corrected her. Ethan watched them together, his daughter and the woman who'd just upended her life for them, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Around noon, Maya announced she was hungry, and Vivian volunteered to make lunch. Ethan raised an eyebrow. You cook? I said I'd make lunch. I didn't say I'd cook. She pulled out her phone. I'm ordering from that Thai place you like. You remember that? I remember everything about you. She said it so simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. While they waited for the food, Maya fell asleep on the couch, exhausted from the morning's excitement. Ethan and Vivian sat on the floor, backs against the couch, not quite touching. Are you okay? Ethan asked quietly. Honestly? I have no idea. Vivian stared at her hands. I spent the last 15 years building that company. It was my entire identity. And now it's just gone. Or not gone, but I'm not at the center of it anymore. And I don't know who I'm supposed to be now. You're supposed to be you, without all the other stuff. What if there's nothing there? What if I'm just an empty shell of a person who only knows how to work? Ethan took her hand. Then we'll figure it out, together. That's what you do when you love someone. Vivian looked at him, eyes shining. You still love me? Even after I disappeared? Yeah, I'm an idiot like that. She laughed and leaned her head on his shoulder. I don't deserve you. Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway. They sat there in comfortable silence until the food arrived. Maya woke up to the smell of pad thai and announced she was starving. They ate on the floor because Maya insisted it was more fun that way. And for the first time in weeks, everything felt normal. Not perfect, not without complications, but normal in a way that mattered. Later that evening, after Maya had gone to bed and the apartment had settled into its usual quiet, Ethan and Vivian ended up on the fire escape. It was technically illegal, and the landlord had threatened to fine anyone who used it, but Ethan had been sneaking out here for years. It was the only place in the apartment where he could see the sky. I used to come out here when Maya was a baby, he said. Those first few months when I had no idea what I was doing. I'd sit here at 3 a.m, exhausted out of my mind, and just stare at the city. It made me feel less alone somehow, like I was part of something bigger. Vivian looked out at the skyline. I had a balcony on the 45th floor, but I don't think I ever actually went out there. Not once, too busy. You've got time now, says that Sidis. Yeah. She turned to him. I'm terrified, Ethan. What if I made a mistake? What if I wake up in 6 months and regret this? Then you'll deal with it. But you can't live your life afraid of making mistakes. That's not living. That's just existing. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just didn't notice. She laughed, and it turned into a sob. I don't know how to do this. How to just be. Without the company, without the meetings, without something to prove. Ethan pulled her close. You don't have to know. That's the whole point. You figure it out as you go. What if I'm bad at it? Then you'll be bad at it, and I'll be bad at whatever I'm doing, and we'll be bad at it together. Vivian pulled back to look at him. You really mean that? Yeah, I really do. She kissed him then, and it felt different than before. Less desperate, more certain, like she was finally allowing herself to believe this could work. When they pulled apart, she smiled. Your daughter's right, you know. You are kind of wise. Kind of. Okay, very wise, for a warehouse worker. Hey! She kissed him again before he could finish the protest. And sitting there on that illegal fire escape, with the city humming below them and the future stretching out uncertain and terrifying, Ethan felt something he'd almost given up on. Hope. Real, tangible hope that maybe, just maybe, this could be the start of something that lasted. The following weeks were an adjustment. Vivian moved some of her things into Ethan's apartment. Not everything, because there wasn't room, but enough that it started to feel like she lived there. She was still learning how to exist without the constant demands of her former job. Some days she handled it well, finding projects to work on or spending time with Maya. Other days she paced the apartment like a caged animal, checking her phone obsessively for emails that no longer mattered. I don't know what to do with myself, she admitted one afternoon. They were at the park, watching Maya play with other kids. I've never had free time before. I don't know what normal people do with their days. Normal people work, Ethan said, just not 18 hours a day. I should find something, a new job or a project or something. Or you could take some time to breathe first. Vivian looked at him like he'd suggested she grow wings and fly. I don't know how to breathe. Oh, then learn. You've got time now. She leaned against him. This is harder than I thought it would be. What is? Being normal, being with you, not because of you, she added quickly. Just because I've never had this before. A relationship where I'm actually present, where I can't hide behind work when things get hard. You think things are going to get hard? Wait. I think things are always hard. That's just life. She watched Maya spin on the merry-go-round. But I want to try. With you. Even when it's hard. Good, because I'm not going anywhere. Vivian smiled. Promise? Promise? It wasn't a perfect solution. There were still moments when Vivian checked her phone and Ethan could see the longing in her eyes, the pull of the life she'd left behind. There were moments when Ethan wondered if she'd wake up one day and realize she'd made a terrible mistake. But there were also moments, more and more of them, when everything felt exactly right. When Vivian laughed at one of Maya's terrible jokes, or when she fell asleep on the couch during movie night, or when she kissed Ethan good morning like it was the most natural thing in the world. And slowly, day by day, they figured it out. Not perfectly, not without stumbles, but together, which was the only way it had ever really mattered anyway. One evening, about a month after Vivian had quit her job, they were sitting on the couch after Maya had gone to bed. Vivian had her feet tucked under her, wearing one of Ethan's old sweatshirts that was 3 sizes too big. She looked more relaxed than he'd ever seen her. "I've been thinking," she said. "About what?" "About what comes next, for me." Ethan tensed slightly. "Are you going back to the company?" "No, not that." She turned to face him. "I want to start something new, smaller. Something that actually means something to me, not just something I inherited from my father." "Like what?" "I don't know yet, but I have ideas. Things I've wanted to do for years but never had time for. Nonprofits, maybe. Mentorship programs for women in business. Things that matter more than quarterly earnings." Ethan smiled. "That sounds perfect." "You think so?" "Yeah, you need a purpose, something that's yours. I have you and Maya. We're not a purpose. We're people. You need both." Vivian leaned her head on his shoulder. "How did I get so lucky?" "You didn't get lucky. You chose this. That's different." "I chose right then." "Damn straight." They sat there in this quiet apartment, and Ethan felt the last of his walls finally come down. This was real. This woman who'd walked away from a billion-dollar empire, who slept in his old sweatshirts and helped his daughter with homework, and kissed him like he was the only person in the world. She was real. And she was his. And for a man who'd spent years feeling like he was never enough, never the right choice, that meant everything. The transition into their new life wasn't the smooth fairy tale either of them had imagined. If anything, the weeks after Vivian stepped down from her company felt more chaotic than before. She'd underestimated how much of her identity had been wrapped up in that job, how much of her daily structure had depended on meetings and deadlines and problems that needed immediate solutions. Now, without any of that, she was adrift in ways that scared both of them. Some mornings, Ethan would wake up to find her already awake, sitting at his tiny kitchen table with her laptop, researching charities or reading business journals like she was studying for an exam she'd never take. Other mornings, she wouldn't get out of bed at all, and he'd have to gently coax her up, reminding her that Maya would be disappointed if she wasn't there for breakfast. "I'm sorry," Vivian said one particularly bad morning. She was still in pajamas at 11 a.m., her hair unbrushed, her eyes distant. "I don't know what's wrong with me." "Nothing's wrong with you. You're adjusting." "It's been 6 weeks. I should be adjusted by now." Ethan sat beside her on the couch. "You spent 15 years running a company. You don't just walk away from that and feel fine a month later. Give yourself time." "I don't have time," her voice cracked. "Maya starts back at school in 2 weeks, and I promised her I'd be the one to pick her up every day. How am I supposed to do that when I can't even get dressed?" "Then we'll figure it out. Maybe she takes the bus some days. Maybe I adjust my shifts. We'll make it work." Vivian looked at him with something close to despair. "You shouldn't have to adjust your life for me. That's not fair." "Life's not fair, but we're in this together, remember?" She nodded, but he could see the doubt creeping in, the fear that she'd made a catastrophic mistake, that she'd traded everything for something that might not work. And Ethan understood that fear because he'd felt it too, late at night when Vivian was asleep and he was alone with his thoughts. What if this didn't last? What if she woke up one day and realized she'd given up too much? But then Maya would come running in, asking Vivian to help her with something, and Vivian's face would light up in a way that made all the fear disappear. Those moments, when Vivian was fully present, when she wasn't thinking about the company or the life she'd left behind, were enough to keep them going. Marcus noticed the change in Ethan. One afternoon at work, he pulled him aside during their break. "You look tired, man." "I'm always tired." "This is different. What's going on?" Ethan hesitated. He hadn't told many people about Vivian's decision to quit her job. It felt too private, too raw. But Marcus had been there from the beginning. And if anyone would understand, it was him. "Vivian's struggling," Ethan admitted, "with the transition, leaving her company. She's having a hard time figuring out who she is without it." Marcus whistled low. That's heavy. Yeah. You doing okay with all that? I'm trying to be. But sometimes I wonder if she regrets it, if she resents me for it. Did she say that? No, but I can see it in her eyes sometimes. This look like she's trapped. Marcus leaned back against the wall. Man, that's tough. But from what you've told me, she made that choice herself. You didn't force her. She chose you. Yet I promote my thoughts. I know, but what if she chose wrong? Then she'll have to deal with that. But you can't spend your life waiting for her to regret you. That's not fair to either of you. Ethan knew Marcus was right, but knowing something and feeling it were two different things. He went home that night carrying the weight of all those unspoken fears, and when he walked into the apartment, he found Vivian cooking dinner. Actually cooking. Not ordering takeout or heating up leftovers, but standing at the stove with a cookbook open on the counter, trying to make something that involved more than 3 ingredients. What's all this? Ethan asked, genuinely surprised. Vivian looked up, her face flushed from the heat. I'm making dinner, or trying to. I found your mom's cookbook in the closet and thought I'd give it a shot. That cookbook's older than me. I know, but it has real food in it, not the kind where you just order from an app. Ethan walked over and looked at what she was making, some kind of chicken dish with vegetables that actually looked edible. You didn't have to do this. I wanted to. She stirred the pan, not meeting his eyes. I've been useless lately. I wanted to do something that mattered. You're not useless. I feel useless. You go to work every day, Maya goes to school, and I just exist. I needed to feel like I was contributing something. Ethan wrapped his arms around her from behind. You contribute by being here. That's enough. It doesn't feel like enough. Then we'll figure out a way to make it feel like enough. They ate dinner together when Maya got home from her friend's house, and the chicken was actually good, better than anything Ethan could have made. Maya declared it the best meal she'd had in weeks, which made Vivian smile in a way that felt genuine. After dinner, Maya went to her room to read, and Ethan and Vivian ended up doing dishes together, falling into an easy rhythm that felt comfortable. I've been thinking, Vivian said, handing him a plate to dry, about what you said, about finding something that matters. Yeah? I want to start a foundation, something focused on helping single parents, resources, childcare support, job training, things that would have helped you when you were starting out with Maya. Ethan stopped drying. That's a good idea. You think so? Yeah. It's personal, it matters, and you'd be good at it. Vivian smiled, and for the first time in weeks, it reached her eyes. I already have a name, the Second Chance Foundation, because everyone deserves a second chance at building something real. I like it. I might need your help with the planning, the programs, figuring out what actually helps. You've got it, whatever you need. She kissed him, soap suds and all, and Ethan felt something shift. This was it, the thing that would give Vivian purpose again, that would help her feel like herself. And maybe, just maybe, it would work. Over the next few weeks, Vivian threw herself into planning the foundation with the same intensity she'd once brought to corporate deals. But this time, it felt different. She wasn't doing it because she had to, or because shareholders expected it. She was doing it because she wanted to, because it meant something to her. She started meeting with other nonprofits, learning how they operated, what worked and what didn't. She reconnected with old colleagues who'd been wanting to do something meaningful with their money. She drafted mission statements and budget proposals and partnership agreements, but she did it all from Ethan's couch, in sweatpants, with Maya occasionally interrupting to show her a drawing or ask for help with homework. You're good at this, Ethan said one evening, watching her work. At what? At building something that matters, without losing yourself in it. Vivian looked up from her laptop. I'm trying. It's weird, you know? I spent so long thinking work and life were the same thing, that if I wasn't working, I wasn't living. But this feels different, like I'm actually present for the life part now. You are present, Maya notices. I notice. Good. She closed her laptop and stretched. Because I don't want to screw this up, any of it. You're not screwing it up. Not yet, anyway. Ethan moved closer. You're allowed to be scared, you know. You don't have to pretend everything's fine all the time. Old habits. She leaned into him. I spent so long being the person who had all the answers. It's hard to admit when I don't. Then don't have all the answers. Just have some of them. That's all anyone can do. Vivian laughed. When did you become so wise? I've always been wise. Everyone keeps ignoring it. She kissed him, and they stayed like that until Maya came out demanding a bedtime story. Vivian volunteered, and Ethan listened from the doorway as she read about dragons and princesses and adventures that always ended happily. When she finished, Maya was already half asleep, and Vivian kissed her forehead before turning off the light. She really loves you, Ethan said when Vivian emerged. I really love her too, both of you. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. But hard took on new meaning when the media caught wind of Vivian's foundation. The story broke on a Tuesday morning, an article in a business magazine about her transition from CEO to philanthropist. It was meant to be positive, but the comment sections turned vicious almost immediately. People accused her of abandoning her company, of wasting her wealth on feel-good projects instead of real business. Others accused Ethan of being a gold digger who'd convinced her to throw her life away. The worst part was the comments about Maya. Strangers online speculating about their relationship, questioning whether Vivian was trying to play house with someone else's kid, suggesting ulterior motives that made Ethan's stomach turn. Don't read the comments, Marcus advised when Ethan made the mistake of checking during his lunch break. Never read the comments. That's Internet Rules 101. They're talking about my daughter. How am I supposed to ignore that? Boo? Dates. Because they're strangers who don't know anything. They're just throwing shit at the wall to see what sticks. Ethan knew Marcus was right, but it didn't make it easier. He went home that night dreading the conversation he'd have to have with Vivian. But when he walked in, she was already on the phone with her lawyer. I don't care if it's technically legal, she was saying, her voice sharp. If they mention Maya again, I want to cease and desist. Make it happen. She hung up and looked at Ethan. You saw the article. Yeah. I'm handling it. Vivian, this isn't your fault. Yes, it is. I should have known this would happen. I should have protected you better. You can't protect us from everything. I can try. She was pacing now, that old corporate energy coming back. I've already talked to the magazine. They're pulling the online version and issuing a correction. And my lawyer's sending letters to everyone who mentioned Maya by name. You don't have to do all that. Yes, I do, because this is my world that's bleeding into yours, and I won't let them hurt my family. The word family hit Ethan square in the chest. She'd said it so naturally, like it was obvious, like they'd always been that. And maybe they had been, even before either of them realized it. Okay, he said quietly, but we deal with this together, not you alone. Vivian stopped pacing and looked at him. Together. Together. She nodded, and some of the tension left her shoulders. I hate that this is happening. I hate that they're dragging you and Maya into this mess. We knew it would be messy. We chose it anyway. You chose me, Vivian corrected, even knowing how complicated it would be. Why? Ethan thought about it. About those first days in the coffee shop, about the way Vivian had looked at him like he was worth knowing, about the gradual building of something he'd almost given up on. Because complicated's better than lonely, and because you're worth it. Vivian's eyes filled with tears. I don't know what I did to deserve you. You didn't have to do anything. You just had to show up. She kissed him then, desperate and grateful, and Ethan held her like she was the most important thing in his world. Because she was. The media storm died down after a few days, replaced by some celebrity scandal that drew the internet's attention elsewhere. But the damage lingered in smaller ways. Maya came home from school one afternoon upset because a kid in her class had said something about Vivian being fake, about how rich people only pretended to care about regular people. Is that true, Dad? Maya asked, her voice small. Is Vivian pretending? Ethan sat her down on the couch. What do you think? I think she loves us, but Tommy said his mom said that billionaires don't actually care about anyone. Tommy's mom doesn't know Vivian. You do. So what do you think? Maya thought about it, her face serious. I think Vivian's real. She helps me with homework even when it's boring, and she laughs at my jokes even when they're not funny. Fake people don't do that. You're right. They don't. Then why do people say mean things? Because sometimes people don't understand things that are different from what they're used to. And instead of trying to understand, they just say mean things. Maya nodded slowly. That's dumb. Yeah, it kind of is. When Vivian came home that evening, Maya ran to her and hugged her hard. Vivian looked at Ethan over Maya's head, questioning. Rough day, Ethan said simply. Vivian held Maya tighter. You want to talk about it? So, kids at school said you're fake, but I told them they're wrong. Vivian pulled back to look at her. What makes you so sure? Because real people help with homework. Fake people don't care about fractions. Vivian laughed, and it was the kind of laugh that came from relief and love all mixed together. You're absolutely right. Fake people definitely don't care about fractions. That's what I said. Maya pulled away. Can we have pizza for dinner? Yeah, we can have pizza. We can... After Maya went to bed, Vivian and Ethan sat on the fire escape again, looking out at the city that never quite went dark. She defended me today, Vivian said quietly. Your daughter stood up for me when other kids were being cruel. She loves you. Of course she did. I never thought I'd have this. A family. People who actually choose to be in my life. Not because of what I can do for them, but just because. You have it now. I'm terrified I'm going to ruin it. Ethan took her hand. Then we'll ruin it together. But I don't think we will. I think we're figuring it out. Yeah? They sat in silence, and Ethan thought about how far they'd come from that first accidental meeting in the coffee shop. How much had changed, how much they'd both risked. And he realized that risk was the whole point. You couldn't build something real without being willing to lose it. You couldn't love someone without knowing they might break your heart. That was the deal. That was life. Vivian's foundation officially launched 2 months later. It was a small event, nothing like the corporate galas she used to attend, held in a community center with folding chairs and donated coffee. But it felt more important than anything Ethan had ever been to. Single parents came to learn about the resources available to them, to connect with others who understood their struggles, to feel less alone. Ethan watched Vivian work the room, talking to people who were barely scraping by, listening to their stories like each one mattered. And he saw her come alive in a way she never had in all those weeks of struggling. This was it. This was what she was meant to do. After the event, they walked home through the city, Maya between them holding both their hands. That was good, Vivian said. Really good. You were good, Ethan corrected. You made people feel heard. That's all I wanted, to do something that actually helped. You did. Maya yawned. Can we go home now? I'm tired. Yeah, sweetheart, we're going home. They walked the rest of the way in comfortable silence, and when they got to the apartment, Maya went straight to bed without argument. Ethan and Vivian collapsed on the couch, exhausted but satisfied. Thank you, Vivian said. For what? For believing in me. When I didn't believe in myself, us. That's what you do when you love someone. She turned to face him. I do love you, so much it scares me sometimes. Good. I love you too, and it scares the hell out of me. They laughed, and it felt like the most honest thing either of them had said in weeks, because love was terrifying. It was taking everything you had and handing it to another person and trusting they wouldn't destroy it. But it was also the only thing that made any of the fear worthwhile. So what now? Vivian asked. Now we keep going, one day at a time. Just like that? Just like that? Vivian smiled and curled into him, and Ethan wrapped his arms around her, holding tight. Outside, the city hummed with its usual chaos. But in here, in this small apartment with its lumpy couch and too thin walls, everything felt exactly right. They'd chosen this. The hard conversations and the uncertain future and the constant navigation of two lives that didn't quite fit together. They'd chosen each other, with all the complications that came with it. And that choice, renewed every single day, was the only thing that mattered. Weeks turned into months, and their life found a new rhythm. Vivian split her time between the foundation and being present for Maya's school events. Ethan kept working at the warehouse, though Vivian had quietly offered to help him find something better. He'd refused, not out of pride, but because the warehouse was his and he wasn't ready to give it up yet. They fought sometimes. Real fights, not just disagreements. About money, about boundaries, about how much of their lives should be public and how much should stay private. Vivian wanted to protect their privacy at all costs. Ethan thought hiding made them look like they had something to be ashamed of. They didn't always agree, and they didn't always resolve things neatly, but they showed up. Every single day, they showed up for each other. One evening, about 4 months after the foundation launched, Ethan came home to find Vivian and Maya baking cookies. The kitchen was a disaster, flour everywhere, chocolate chips on the floor, but they were laughing. "Dad, but," Maya called, "we're making cookies." "While Vivian's making cookies, I'm mostly eating the dough." "That's the best part," Ethan agreed. Vivian looked up, flour in her hair, and smiled. "We got ambitious." "I can see that. Come help us. We're drowning here." Ethan joined them, and they spent the next hour making a mess and burning half the cookies and laughing at how bad they all were at baking. When the last batch came out, only slightly burnt, they sat at the table eating warm cookies and milk. "This is nice," Maya said through a mouthful of chocolate. "Yeah," Ethan agreed. "It is." Vivian reached for his hand under the table and squeezed. And Ethan squeezed back, grateful for this messy, complicated, imperfect life they were building together. It wasn't what he'd imagined all those years ago when he was raising Maya alone, exhausted, and lonely. It wasn't what Vivian had imagined when she was running a billion-dollar company, convinced work was all she'd ever have. But it was theirs, and that made it everything. The decision to move in together officially came on a rainy Thursday in March, almost a year after that first coffee shop meeting. Vivian had been practically living at Ethan's apartment for months, but she'd kept her penthouse, partly out of practicality, partly because letting go of it felt like cutting the last thread to her old life. But Maya had been asking questions. Why did Vivian have 2 homes? Why didn't she just stay with them all the time? And one morning, sitting at breakfast with flowers still on the counter from their latest baking disaster, Vivian looked at Ethan and said the words that had been building for weeks. "I'm selling the penthouse." Ethan looked up from his coffee. "You sure?" "I'm sure. I haven't slept there in 2 months. It's just sitting empty. And every time I go back to grab clothes or whatever, it feels like visiting a museum, like someone else's life." That was your life. Not anymore. She reached across the table for his hand. "My life is here, with you and Maya, in this tiny apartment that barely fits the 3 of us. And I don't want to keep one foot in the past just in case things don't work out. I'm all in." Maya, who'd been eating cereal and pretending not to listen, looked up with a grin. "Does that mean you're staying forever?" "If your dad will have me." Ethan felt something warm settle in his chest. "Yeah, I'll have you." "What?" "Good." Maya went back to her cereal. "Because I already told my friends you're basically my second mom, and it would be really embarrassing if you left now." Vivian laughed, but Ethan saw tears in her eyes. "Well, we can't have that." The penthouse sold faster than any of them expected, some tech executive who didn't even negotiate the price. Vivian signed the papers without ceremony, and just like that, the last piece of her old life was gone. She moved the few things she cared about into Ethan's apartment, which suddenly felt even smaller with boxes of books and framed photos and expensive kitchen equipment they'd never use. "We need a bigger place," Ethan said, staring at the stack of boxes blocking the hallway. "We do." Vivian looked around the cramped space. "But not too big. I don't want some massive house where we never see each other. I want something that feels like home." What does home feel like? Well, she thought about it. Like this. Just with more space for Maya's telescope and maybe a kitchen where we can both fit at the same time. They started looking the following weekend. Nothing too fancy, nothing that screamed wealth. Just a place big enough for the 3 of them to exist comfortably. They found it in a neighborhood 20 minutes from Ethan's warehouse. A 2-story house with a small backyard and windows that let in actual sunlight. It needed work, the realtor admitted. The previous owners hadn't updated anything since the 90s. But it had good bones, and Maya fell in love with it the second she saw the room that would be hers. "It has a window seat," she shouted, running back to them. "Dad, it has an actual window seat where I can read and look at the stars." Ethan looked at Vivian. "What do you think?" "I think it's perfect." They bought it a week later, paying cash from the penthouse sale. Moving in took another month. Packing up Ethan's apartment, fixing the worst of the house's problems, arguing about paint colors and furniture and whether they needed a dining room table when they mostly ate on the couch anyway. "We need a table," Vivian insisted, "for family dinners. We've been having family dinners on the couch for months. That's different. Now we have space." Ethan didn't argue. The truth was, he liked the idea of family dinners at an actual table. It felt grown up, settled, like they were building something that would last. The first night in the new house, they ordered pizza and ate it sitting on the floor because the furniture hadn't been delivered yet. Maya ran from room to room, her footsteps echoing on the hardwood, yelling about how much space there was. Vivian leaned against Ethan, exhausted and happy. "This is real, isn't it?" she said quietly. "This is actually happening." "Yeah, it's happening. I keep waiting to wake up, to realize this was all some dream and I'm still in my old life, miserable and alone." "You're not alone, and you're not going back." She kissed him, and it tasted like pizza and new beginnings. When they pulled apart, she was smiling. "I love you. I love you too." Maya ran back into the room. "Can I sleep in my new room tonight, even without a bed?" "Absolutely not," Ethan said. "We'll set up the air mattress." "Can Vivian sleep in there too? We can have a sleepover." Vivian laughed. "A sleepover sounds perfect." They spent that first night in Maya's room on air mattresses, the three of them squeezed into a space meant for one. Maya fell asleep between them, one hand holding Ethan's, the other holding Vivian's. And Ethan lay there in the darkness, listening to his daughter breathe, feeling Vivian's warmth beside him, and thought about how far they'd all come. A year ago, he'd been alone, lonely in a way that felt permanent, and now he had this, a house, a family, a future that actually looked like something worth living. It wasn't perfect. The house needed work. Vivian still had days where she struggled with her identity outside of work. Maya still asked hard questions about why her birth mother had left. But they had each other. And that made everything else manageable. The months that followed were an exercise in building routines. Vivian's foundation grew, adding programs and partnerships, helping more families than she'd imagined possible. She traveled sometimes for work, but never for more than a day or two, and she always came home. Ethan got promoted at the warehouse, a supervisor position that came with better pay and slightly better hours. It wasn't glamorous, but it was his, and Vivian never made him feel like he needed to be anything other than what he was. Maya thrived. She made friends in the new neighborhood, joined the science club at school, spent hours staring through her telescope at planets she'd only read about. She called Vivian Mom sometimes, casually, like it had always been that way. The first time it happened, Vivian had frozen, tears in her eyes, until Maya looked up from her homework and said, "What? Is that okay?" "Yeah," Vivian had managed. "That's more than okay." They became the kind of family Ethan had only seen in movies. Not perfect, not without problems, but real. They fought about stupid things, whose turn it was to do dishes, whether Maya was spending too much time on screens, what color to paint the living room. But they also laughed until their stomachs hurt, had movie nights where they fell asleep tangled together on the couch, celebrated small victories like they were miracles. But life, as it tends to do, had one more test waiting for them. It came in the form of a phone call on a Tuesday afternoon in June. Ethan was at work when his phone rang, an unknown number he almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Is this Ethan Cole?" "Yeah, who's this?" "My name is Jennifer Lawson. I'm calling about Maya's biological mother." Ethan's blood went cold. He stepped away from his coworkers, phone pressed tight to his ear. "What about her?" "She's been trying to locate you. She wants to see Maya." The words hit him like a physical blow. Maya's mother, the woman who'd walked out when Maya was 6 months old and never looked back, suddenly wanted to be involved? After 8 years of silence? "No," Ethan said immediately. "Absolutely not. Mr. Cole, I understand this is difficult, but she has rights. She gave up her rights when she abandoned her daughter. She doesn't get to just show up now and disrupt Maya's life. I'm not here to argue legalities. I'm just letting you know she's filed a petition for visitation. You'll be receiving official documents soon." Ethan hung up, his hands shaking. He stood there in this warehouse parking lot trying to process what he'd just heard. Maya's mother was back. After all these years, she was back. and she wanted in. He called Vivian immediately. "What's wrong?" she asked, picking up on his tone instantly. "Maya's mother. She's trying to get visitation rights." Hit. Silence. Then, "Where are you?" "Work." "Come home. We'll figure this out." Ethan left work early, something he never did, and drove home in a daze. Vivian was waiting when he got there, and he collapsed into her arms before he even made it through the door. "I can't let her back into Maya's life," he said. "She's been happy, stable. She has you now. I can't let someone who abandoned her just waltz back in and—" "Stop!" Vivian pulled back to look at him. "We're not making any decisions until we know what we're dealing with." "Did she say why? Why now?" "No, just that she filed a petition. Then we get a lawyer. We fight this if we need to, but we do it together." Ethan nodded, but the fear didn't go away. He'd spent 8 years being Maya's only parent, protecting her from a world that hadn't been particularly kind. And now the one person he'd hoped would never come back was trying to force her way in. They didn't tell Maya right away. They wanted to understand the situation first, to know what they were up against. The official documents arrived 3 days later, and they sat at their new dining room table, the one they'd argued about buying, reading through legal language that made Ethan's head spin. "She's claiming she's been sober for 2 years, Vivian said, scanning the pages. "That she's in a stable living situation and wants to rebuild a relationship with her daughter." "Too late," Ethan said bitterly. "She had 8 years to get sober, 8 years to figure her shit out. She doesn't get to decide now that she's ready." "I know, but legally, it's not that simple." "Why not? She abandoned Maya. That should be the end of it." Vivian reached for his hand. "Because family court prioritizes the child's best interest. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, they think that includes giving the biological parent a chance." "That's bullshit." "I agree, but we need to be smart about this." They hired a lawyer, one who specialized in family law, and had a reputation for being ruthless. She reviewed the case and gave them the hard truth. Maya's mother had a chance, however slim, of getting supervised visitation, but only if she could prove she was stable and that seeing her would benefit Maya. "The best thing we can do," the lawyer said, "is let Maya have a voice. She's 8, old enough that a judge will consider her opinion. If she doesn't want contact with her mother, that carries weight." Which meant they had to tell Maya, the conversation Ethan had been dreading for days. They waited until after dinner when Maya was in her room reading. Ethan and Vivian sat on the edge of her bed, and Maya looked up from her book with immediate suspicion. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," Ethan said, though his voice betrayed him. "We just need to talk to you about something important." Maya closed her book. "Okay." Ethan took a breath. "Your birth mother, the woman who left when you were a baby, she's trying to come back into your life. She's asked a judge to let her visit you." Maya stared at him. "Why?" "I don't know. Sweetheart, she says she's been working on herself and wants to know you." "Do I have to see her?" "No. Not if you don't want to, but there might be a judge who asks you what you want, and we need you to be honest about how you feel." Maya was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was small. "I don't remember her. I know. And she left. She didn't want me." "That's not—" Ethan started, but Maya cut him off. "She did, Dad. She left because she didn't want to be my mom. And now I have a mom." She looked at Vivian. "I don't need another one." Vivian's eyes filled with tears. "Maya, I don't want to see her," Maya said, more firmly now. "I don't want her in my life. Is that okay?" "Yeah," Ethan said, pulling her into a hug. "That's okay. That's completely okay." They held her while she cried, not the dramatic sobs of a child, but the quiet, confused tears of someone trying to understand why she wasn't wanted the first time and why that person suddenly wanted her now. And Ethan felt his heart break all over again for his daughter, who'd never asked for any of this. The court hearing was set for early August. Maya didn't have to be there, but the judge would review statements from everyone involved: Ethan, Vivian, Maya's mother, and Maya herself. Their lawyer prepared them for every possibility, but Ethan could see the worry in her eyes. There were no guarantees. The night before the hearing, Ethan couldn't sleep. He stood in the backyard, staring at the stars Maya loved so much, and felt Vivian's arms wrap around him from behind. "You're going to wear a hole in the grass," she said softly. "I can't lose her." "You won't. Maya's yours. A judge isn't going to change that. You don't know that." "I do, because I see how much she loves you, how much she's thrived with you. Any judge with half a brain will see that too." Ethan turned to face her. "What if they don't?" Ethan turned to face. "What if they think she needs her biological mother in her life? Then we fight, we appeal, we do whatever it takes. But you're not doing this alone, Ethan. You've got me, and you've got Maya, and we're not going anywhere." He kissed her, desperate and grateful, and held on like she was the only thing keeping him from falling apart. Because she was. The hearing itself was anticlimactic in the worst way. They sat in a sterile courtroom while lawyers argued about what was best for a child none of them really knew. Maya's mother was there, older, thinner, looking nothing like the woman Ethan remembered. She cried when she talked about getting sober, about rebuilding her life, about wanting a second chance with her daughter. And Ethan sat there thinking about all the chances she'd already had, all the birthdays she'd missed, the school plays, the nightmares, the skinned knees. She'd missed everything that mattered. And now she wanted credit for showing up 8 years late. The judge listened to everyone, reviewed the documents, asked questions that felt invasive and pointless. And then she asked to see Maya's statement, a letter Maya had written with their lawyer's help, explaining in her own words how she felt. The judge read it in silence, and when she looked up, Ethan couldn't read her expression. "I'm going to take some time to review everything," she said. "I'll issue a decision within 2 weeks." 2 weeks. 14 days of waiting, of not knowing whether his daughter's life was about to be upended by someone who had no right to be there. They went home in silence. Maya was waiting with Marcus and his wife, and she ran to them the second they walked in. "What happened?" "We won't know for a couple of weeks," Ethan said, trying to sound calm. "But we told them everything. Now we just have to wait." Did my birth mother? Was she there?" "Yeah, she was there." What did she say?" Ethan knelt down so they were eye level. "She said she's sorry, that she's been working on herself, that she wants to know you." Maya's face hardened in a way that made her look older than 8. "I don't care. I don't want to know her." "I know, sweetheart, and we told them that." "Good." She hugged him tight. And Ethan held his daughter and prayed to whoever might be listening that the judge would see what was obvious to everyone who actually knew Maya, that she was happy, that she was loved, that forcing a stranger into her life wouldn't help anything. The 2 weeks passed like months. Ethan threw himself into work, into home projects, into anything that would keep his mind occupied. Vivian did the same with the foundation, but he could see the worry in her eyes every time she looked at Maya. They were all holding their breath, waiting for a decision that would either shatter their world or let them keep building it. The call came on a Thursday afternoon. Their lawyer, her voice carefully neutral. The judge issued her ruling. Ethan's heart stopped. "And?" "She's denying the petition for visitation. She determined that Maya's best interest is served by maintaining her current stable home environment. The biological mother's rights remain terminated." Ethan sat down hard on the couch. "Say that again." "You won, Ethan. Maya stays with you. No visitation, no disruption. It's over." He couldn't speak, couldn't process the relief flooding through him. "Ethan, you there?" "Yeah, I'm here. Thank you. Thank you so much." He hung up and immediately called Vivian, who was at a foundation meeting. She answered on the first ring. "We won," he said, and his voice broke. "The judge said no. Maya stays with us." Vivian made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. "Oh, thank Ethan, that's incredible." "I know, I can't believe it. I'm coming home. Right now. Tell Maya." Ethan found Maya in her room, reading on her window seat. She looked up when he came in, her face anxious. "The judge decided," he said simply, "you're staying with us. No visits. Nothing. It's done." Maya stared at him for a beat, and then she was off the window seat and in his arms, crying and laughing at the same time. "Really? I don't have to see her?" "Really, you're mine. You've always been mine. And Vivian's? And Vivian's. She held on to him, and Ethan felt years of fear finally release. They'd made it. Through all the uncertainty and legal threats and sleepless nights, they'd made it to the other side. When Vivian got home 20 minutes later, Maya ran to her with the same enthusiasm, and the three of them stood in their kitchen, the one they'd argued about, in the house they'd chosen together, and held each other like they were the only people in the world. "We're a family," Maya said, her voice muffled against Vivian's shoulder. "A real family." "Yeah, sweetheart," Vivian said, tears streaming down her face. "We are." That night, after Maya was asleep, Ethan and Vivian sat on their back porch with cheap beer and expensive relief. The summer air was warm, cicadas buzzing in the trees, and everything felt right in a way it hadn't in weeks. "I keep thinking about that day in the coffee shop," Vivian said, "when I sat down at your table uninvited." "Best bad decision you ever made," she laughed. "I almost didn't. I was so used to hiding, to keeping people at a distance. But something about you made me think maybe it was safe to stop hiding." "Was it?" "More than safe. It was everything I didn't know I needed." She turned to look at him. "You saved me. You know that? Not from anything dramatic, just from a life that wasn't actually living." "You saved me too. I was so lonely I didn't even realize how lonely I was anymore. I just accepted that was my life. And now I can't imagine being anywhere else." He took her hand. "I love you, Vivian, for choosing us, for staying even when it was hard, for being the person Maya needed, that we both needed. I love you too, both of you, more than I thought I could love anything." "Whoa! Asamas." They sat in comfortable silence, and Ethan thought about all the ways life surprised you, how you could spend years convinced you knew what your story was supposed to be, only to have everything change because a stranger sat down at your table and asked if the seat was taken. He'd gone to that coffee shop expecting nothing, maybe a mediocre date, maybe another disappointment to add to the collection. Instead, he'd found this, a family he'd built from scratch, a home that felt like it had always been waiting for them, a future that actually looked like something worth having. "You know what the weirdest part is?" Vivian said, breaking the silence. "What?" "I spent my entire adult life chasing success, building a company, making money, proving I was somebody. And I thought that was what mattered. But this, sitting here with you, knowing Maya's asleep upstairs, knowing we're all safe and together, this is the first time I've felt successful in a way that actually counts." Ethan understood exactly what she meant. Success wasn't the warehouse promotion, or the foundation, or the house they'd bought. It was this, the quiet moments, the ordinary evenings, the knowledge that you'd built something real with another person, and it was still standing. "We did good, didn't we?" he said. "Yeah, we did really good." They finished their beers and went inside, locking the door on a world that had tried hard to keep them apart. Upstairs, Maya was sprawled across her bed, one arm hanging off the side, her telescope pointed at the window even though she was asleep. They stood in her doorway for a moment, watching her breathe, and Ethan felt that familiar ache of love so intense it almost hurt. "She's going to be okay," Vivian whispered. "Because of you. Because of us." They went to bed in the room they shared, in the house they'd chosen, in the life they'd built from nothing but hope and stubbornness, and the willingness to show up for each other even when it was terrifying. And as Ethan drifted off to sleep, Vivian's heartbeat steady beneath his ear, he thought about that blind date that never happened. How a woman he'd never met before sat down at his table and changed everything. How the worst Saturday afternoon of his life became the beginning of the best thing that ever happened to him. How sometimes the right person shows up when you least expect them, and all you have to do is be brave enough to let them stay. And he thought about what he'd tell Maya someday, when she was older and asking about how they all ended up together. He'd tell her the truth. That love wasn't about perfect timing or perfect circumstances or perfect people. It was about two imperfect people choosing each other every single day, even when it was hard, even when it scared them, even when the world said it wouldn't work. Because in the end, that's all love really was. A choice. Made over and over again in 1,000 small moments, until those moments built into something that looked like forever. And sometimes, If you were lucky enough and brave enough and willing to risk everything on a stranger who asked if the seat was taken, that forever actually lasted,